Ladies and gentlemen, the Denpa Men are fucking back. Well, as it stands, the new game will be localized and is coming out July 22nd globally. For us Denpa Men fans who've been in the fandom and have waited, well, a very fucking long time for a new game, we're all very, very excited. And with the new game, that means that there are a wave of new fans and even older ones that weren't aware that there was a fandom in the first place. In the description, I will be including the Denpa Men Discord server, the subreddit, and the community Twitter, YouTube, and other places where you can engage with the fandom directly, especially if you're not aware that we did have a fandom. Like, believe it or not, to many people, the Denpa Men community has been around for a very, very long time, since the dawn of Google Plus and Miiverse. This was where the community actually had its start. That being said, as the title of this video suggests, this is a video specifically made in regards to debunking rumors and myths regarding the Denpa Men, as well as addressing certain bits of misinformation that people have been spreading unknowingly. It's important, as someone who's considered a part of the old guard in this fandom, to correct the record and provide necessary information to newer fans. While I do plan on going into depth about how the Denpa Men games work, so that way new fans will essentially get a good grip on what they're expecting to have when they play the game, that being said, it's highly important that many people that come into this fandom come in with some clear expectations. That being said, hopefully you enjoy this video and maybe even check out other videos by other fans in the community. Let's start this off very, very simple by addressing probably one of the most annoying bits of information that have driven us Denpa Men fans nuts. That being, the Denpa Men and Miis are one in the same. This is patently false. The Denpa Men and Miis, while very similar in appearance, are not one in the same. They are completely different on principle for a variety of reasons. One of which being that while the Miis are based off of humans and Kokeshi dolls, we don't really know what made or inspired the creation of the Denpa Men themselves. What we do know is that they are humanoid creatures, not human. On top of that, Miis themselves, again, have more of a cartoonish look to humans and are very limited in what they can look like. Whereas with Denpa Men, they just are randomly generated based off of MAC addresses as on the original 3DS releases. However, with the later games, it depended on things like Google Maps data and having to generate Denpa Men from that. On top of that, we don't know how the Denpa Men will be generated on the Nintendo Switch release, as it lacks a feature that the Nintendo 3DS originally had when it came to generating Denpa Men. In other words, the Miis and the Denpa Men are not the same. In addition to this, with Miis, you can customize them and make them look like you or a celebrity, but with the Denpa Men themselves, that requires the use of external factors, such as the QR code maker and save editors. Currently, as it stands, there is no save editor for the second game, there's one for the third game, and for the fourth game, being a free-to-play game, you have to do the hex editing manually. Keep in mind, that is external factors to get Denpa Men to either look like yourself or look like some other random person or character. On top of that, Denpa Men can't be customized or altered in any way. Sure, there's things like fusion and unions that you can do to get desirable Denpa Men, but that's about it. You have almost no control in the process. On top of that, just in general, Miis and Denpa Men are not the same, and neither have they been in similar genre type games, with the exception of Miitopia. Oh, and one more thing I forgot to mention was paint. That is the only thing you can physically change about your Denpa Men, is changing the color of their bodies, which we will get to in a moment. That is the only form of customization, and that's not including things like equipment and so on. Even worse is people calling them Mii ripoffs. To be completely clear, the Denpa Men are not ripoffs of the Miis, and as far as we're aware, there was no inspiration directly taken from the Nintendo Miis. But later on in the video, I will be addressing the claim that this franchise and its games are somehow a ripoff of Tomodachi Life and Miitopia, and for some, Animal Crossing? What? This is yet another annoying and especially frustrating claim. Now, don't get me wrong, I do like me some Denpa Mans, but to be completely honest here, this bit of misinformation hasn't been helped, especially by big YouTubers like Vernius. As much as I do like the guy, and I'm very thankful that he's in the server and is accepting feedback from fans who are helping him with his live streams and guiding him through certain dungeons, the Denpa Men are not an all-male species. Just to make this perfectly clear, there are Denpa women, notably characters like Crystal, Amber, Mary, and in the mobile game, Yui. To be completely honest here, it's just frustrating to have to repeatedly make this clear that the Denpa Men are, well, a multi-gendered species. What doesn't help is that in Japan, this wasn't even a problem, because the original title for the series is Denpa Ningen no RPG. I probably butchered that, but specifically focus on Denpa Ningen. That just literally translates to Denpa humans or Denpa people, meaning there wasn't really any gendered connotation for the species. What also didn't help was the English social media attempting to make it seem as though the species was completely male, with a few exceptions here or there, and with Crystal being seemingly the only girl in the series. That aged like fucking milk by the time the second game came out. But to be completely frank here, I don't fault people for not knowing and simply just assuming this was an entirely male species. But yeah, no, it's not a male-only species, and there are women. You can catch female Denpa Men, and you can tell by how they talk and what they specifically discuss that, yeah, that's a woman right there. As well as the fact that Denpa Men themselves, when you catch them, have unique personality types that can affect dialogue. However, it doesn't really play into things like gameplay, it's more so flavor text. The only few times where this dialogue will specifically be affected is in the Denpa Men Free and I believe the mobile game, where if you put a Denpa Men of a different personality that isn't your hero in the first slot, then yeah, they're gonna have unique dialogue given the stage and the setting. But other than that, it doesn't really affect the game in any sort of way. It's almost the same bit of dialogue, just said by a different Denpa Man. Now let's get to the other most egregious claims regarding the Denpa Men series as a whole. The fact that it is seemingly a ripoff of Tomodachi Life and Miitopia, and to a lesser extent, Animal Crossing for whatever reason. Let's get this right out of the gate and explain what the heck these games are. Tomodachi Life, coming out in I believe 2013 or so, is a social simulator type game where you have an apartment and it's full of me's, including the me of yourself, your lookalike. Or whoever the hell you want to put in that is making your me seemingly talk like it's your lookalike. This game came out to a lot of critical reception, along with a lot of criticism regarding same-sex marriages being absent from the game. Now, is it a good game? It is. I've played it, and it's genuinely a lot of fun. Now, let's address the other one in the room, Miitopia. Miitopia originally came out sometime in 2016 as a Japan-only title. It wouldn't be until YouTuber GWizard777, alongside his partner Xiaomi, would go about doing a Let's Play series, as well as translating some of the dialogue and other things. For the time being, before the game was localized, this was the main video series that those who were interested would have to follow along to know what was happening. And while Shell does lament on the fact that some of the translations were admittedly botched, it did influence and pave the way for an English translation done by fans. That wouldn't be until 2017 when the game was officially localized, and later on, in 2021, would receive a Nintendo Switch port that was enhanced and had a lot of quality of life features and improvements. So, what does a life simulator type game and a very simplistic RPG have in common with the Denpa Men games? Not a lot, admittedly. If anything, the Denpa Men is strictly a dungeon crawler RPG with a quirky story. You could argue that Miitopia could easily be considered a ripoff of the Denpa Men, given the quirky dialogue and personality types that can be given to your characters, as well as your own Mii lookalike. Whereas with Tomodachi Life, that kinda comes in with the Denpa box, as well as the Denpa house. You see, in the Denpa Men games, your Denpa Men are stored in a house, and later in a box of sorts, that allows you to store your Denpa Men. This will allow you to be able to converse with them and talk with them directly, and with the Denpa Men free, you can pet them, talk with them, and give them food items and increase their bliss. That being said, that's where the similarities end. As you see, the Denpa Men doesn't have a life simulator focus in the slightest, outside of the fact that you can occasionally decorate Denpa Men's houses in the third and free-to-play games. That's about it. Sure, Denpa Men having unique personalities isn't anything new, but that's kind of where the similarities end regarding Tomodachi Life. Whereas with Miitopia, it's a bit different in a lot of ways, and this does require me needing to explain some of the mechanics between the two games. Starting off with something very, very simple, Miitopia is a game that has a straightforward path that you go along. There isn't really a dungeon crawling aspect to it at all. Whereas with the Denpa Men, it is a strictly dungeon crawling based RPG, meaning you gotta crawl through that dungeon and get to point A to point B, along with getting treasure chests. And you have the ability to look at a map. Whereas with Miitopia, you can't exactly look at the map, and what little map exists is just occasionally there to show you that you're going on a straight line, or showing the different deviating paths that you go across. In addition to this, Miitopia has very, very limited healing items and so on. Whereas with the Denpa Men, while those items are just limited to how much you can buy, you can hold up to 99 of every item in the game, including key items for some reason. But the thing is, Miitopia has a completely different story as well. With the Denpa Men, you have to rescue Crystal in the 3 games, and with the free-to-play ones, the stories are completely different. With Miitopia, you just have to rescue the faces of Miis and aid in a quest that is just pretty fun in general. Sure, it takes away from the traditional aspect of, you gotta save the princess, or that special someone, and instead makes it about you helping people in the world after being given a divine power. That being said, that doesn't mean that you aren't given divine powers in the games. Not necessarily, though. But it's not a story-based focus, with the exception of holding on to things such as the Holy Orb, but even then, the Holy Orb doesn't really do anything outside of opening up the gate to Hades, which, yes, ladies and gents, you do go to hell in the second game, whereas with Miitopia, you don't really go to hell and you save the big bad, or whatever. I don't really want to spoil it in case people haven't played Miitopia, which honestly you should. Similarly, you should also play the Denpa Men games. They're quite fire. But yeah, the similarities between the Denpa Men, Tomodachi Life, and Miitopia, they just don't align, as they are completely different on principle in a variety of ways. However, let's address the other one, Animal Crossing. Oh boy, why are people calling this a fucking Animal Crossing clone? Oh, it's because of the island customization. Joy. I have not played Animal Crossing in a hot minute, and I don't intend to for very personal reasons, but to keep it simple, in the Denpa Men, you can freely customize your island in the Denpa Men Free, the mobile game, and even the upcoming Switch game. Whereas with Animal Crossing, that requires you to get signatures and petitions and all sorts of things in order to make these monuments. In the Denpa Men games, you're just limited by how much gold you have in your fucking pockets. That's it! There's nothing else to it! No creatures or whoever moves in besides the Denpa Men themselves onto the island. That is it. Please, stop calling it a clone of Tomodachi Life, Miitopia, or Animal Crossing. They are not the same on principle and have unique features between them that one another don't have. Thank you. This is yet another bit of classic misinformation that's existed for a very, very, very long time. and people still believe this, despite what the early commercials display, which is just the limitations of costumes. Denpa Men don't wear spandex suits or morph suits or whatever. That's fur, and they are completely naked. This is something that is true thanks to a very old interview when it came to the release regarding the second Denpa Men game, where Yamana Manabu, the series director and CEO of Genius Seniority, was interviewed and asked this very same question, mainly asking if the Denpa Men are wearing suits or spandex, and was told that they were in fact completely naked, outside of a very thin layer of fur, similar to that of a zebra, covering their bodies. This information has royally scarred many people in the community for many years, and some people get very, very annoyed when us Denpa Men fans enjoy mentioning that bit of information. We just find it really funny seeing people's reactions to this information, and in case people think I'm a dirty fucking liar, I will provide the full interview in the description below, because I think that is funny as fuck, and I love seeing people freak out when they hear this information. So again, the Denpa Men do not wear spandex or morph suits. They have fur on their bodies. In fact, it was only recently that the Japanese fandom had found out about this information, thanks to some art that I made and tweeted out. Oops. Well, that about does it in terms of misinformation and also just flat out misunderstandings that were in the series, as far as I'm aware. If there were any that I missed in particular, feel free to put them in the comments, as I do believe hearing others' feedback, especially others in the Denpa Men community, is highly important. That being said, I highly appreciate people watching this, especially to the end. It's not every day that you get to see a franchise that you've held on to dearly for over 10 years finally get an English release, again, in over 10 years. That being said, please support the content creators whose footage I used for this video, as well as supporting the Denpa Men community, and most importantly of all, Genius Seniority when the game releases. I get it, it's a free-to-play game, and I know that feeling. I don't like microtransactions either, but supporting the devs directly can be very helpful, as it may potentially lead, from what we fans really want, to a re-release of the original trilogy, making it a lot more accessible to newcomers to get a grip on the story and see what got us so hooked on the Denpa Men craze. That being said, thank you for watching and have a wonderful evening. Or day. Whatever. Bye!